All right, welcome back once again to Shooting the Bull with Brock and Dwight, aka the world's strongest plumber. We're here to shoot the bull, and we've covered aliens, we've covered alien craft, we got all deep, we got all weird with it. I'm sure we'll have that discussion again as more, I don't know, more weeks pass and we find more aliens out there or whatever we want to talk about. But it was fun and eye-opening, and we had a good time, and hopefully people enjoyed those. Make sure you watch those and share them with your friends and everything, and subscribe to the channel for more to come. Dwight, you wanted to talk, well, we kicked around some ideas what we could talk about, and then you brought up work culture, and that's an interesting one for me. And when we talk about work culture, in your mind, what exactly is the definition of work culture?
I guess work culture, what we're talking about is like in the 2023 work culture,
Mm-hmm.
the culture at work and how it's changed and how it's evolved or devolved over time. So the culture, I guess, would be, oh, geez, it's a good question, right? It's kind of loaded too, right? So
Yeah.
because we're talking about work, are we talking about working for somebody, or are
Mm-hmm.
we just talking about work in general?
So for me, when I hear work culture, that is that whatever the mindset is around employment, whether it is, again, like you said, for a business or by yourself, if you are an entrepreneur, you are self-employed, or that. So it's the culture, the mindset of that revolves around people working, however that may be. That's the best way I could sum it up. And my take on it is the work culture is definitely changing, and it's in the landscape of what we've always had in our heads for work. The 40-hour work week, putting the grind in, hustling, all that stuff. That work culture, that grind culture, is starting to change. Is starting to change. Does that make sense? Are we on the same page here?
I think so. Yeah, you're talking about how we work together too. That could be the culture too, right? Because it's like
Yep.
it's all intertwined with each other.
Mhm.
You have to work with people. So
Yeah.
yeah. I think you're
Well,
right on.
if I had it my way, I wouldn't have to work with anyone. I wouldn't see anyone. I wouldn't do anything. See, now you kind of have that because I know you obviously in your trade in the plumbing business, you're by yourself most days, right? Working, or do you have a crew with you? What do you do?
Well, most days now that I broke off and I'm on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I have one person with me, but I
Mhm.
always have a person in the office.
Mhm.
So I do have employees and I do have people on the job that I am working with, and also I'm working with since my scope is in my I guess my niche is more commercial.
Mm.
I work with a lot of maintenance people,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I'm with people on the job all the time.
Okay, so you have to deal with people like that, and that's the other thing, man. I don't know how we get into this, like what we want to discuss, because for me, I guess when I hear work culture, I think of this ridiculous mindset of working 80 hours a week, working for a company that doesn't give two shits about you, and then you work there for 45 years, you retire with a gold watch, and then you live the last 15 and you die. You know what I mean? Like it's this weird thing that we did for a long time where everyone's like, now you got to put the grind in, you got to work weekends, you got to sacrifice family time and all that. And I'm like, fuck that. I don't want to do that. But it's starting to change, I think, with the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation. We don't want that. And the pandemic really opened it up. The pandemic changed how people see. They're like, wait a minute, I don't have to sit in traffic, go to an office, work for 9 hours with a 30-minute lunch, sit in traffic again, come home, be too tired to do anything, sit in front of the TV. Like, that's not an existence. And we started learning we can do remote work. We can find other things. People are kind of chasing their passion. I mean, is that, I mean, is that
Yeah,
what you're seeing or
I,
in the work culture?
dude, you kind of hit it right on the head how I wanted to start. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking the exact same thing, and that was, man, working for a company 50, 80 years ago was different than working for a company now. Like you worked for that company when you were younger, you worked up the ladder, and that was something to be achieved and proud of,
Mm-hmm.
right? And things have changed since then.
Yeah.
And we can kind of get into why that's happened, and also too that I think that this is also two-sided. This is not just the employees, but this is the employers and
Yeah.
what has happened It's more of a negative connotation to it, right?
Yeah.
Because it hasn't gotten better. It's probably gotten worse. And
For
and
the
why
now
why
for
is that?
worse for the employees is what I think I would lean into. And we've kind of joked, you see all these articles coming out now with, people actually really enjoy working in the office and people are missing that camaraderie that they had. I'm like, that's a bullshit article that someone probably wrote, because what I think the pandemic showed is that there's a lot of people whose only job was to watch other people work. And those people are scared now because they're realizing they're fucking irrelevant, and it's changed it because it's like, no, wait, hold on a sec. What do you mean? I don't need to go to I'm getting the job done here. So let's talk about back in the day when you were a factory man. Okay. You're a factory guy. Let's say it's the 50s, the 60s, whatever. And you worked your 40 hours a week. You had Saturdays, Sundays off. Whatever it may be, 40, 50 hours. You earned a good paycheck. You had a livable wage. I wouldn't maybe say abused by the company, but you worked hard and you did your 45 years with the company, and then that was it. That's not something that people strive for nowadays.
No, it's not. People were probably, the safety wasn't there either back then. And I'm going to go with what I know it. So I'm going to talk about the trades when I talk about like the work or factory, right? Like,
yeah, yep.
It's blue collar. A lot of people were, but yeah, the cost of living was just different too, right, man? Like you could support a family on that. Your wife could probably stay home, and you could do a lot of those traditional things, and you could retire with some dignity, and and come home at the end of the day maybe stinking and sweaty and feel good about what you did. Yeah, there was probably that. I think there was. Brock, I want to get into this too. Is like, man, I ain't as tough as these plumbers were 60 years ago. I'm a baby back bitch compared to some of these plumbers, and I see how they did things, and it's just like, whoa, fuck, man! Like some of they carry these cast iron tubs up the stairs on their back. And I'll bitch about it. They'll do it by themselves. And I'll bitch about it when I got help to carry them up the stairs. Like, don't you buy a cast iron tub? So I see it in myself too. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? So I see that in myself. We're not as good as the generation before us. And I want to say, like, man, you look at the greatest generation, and that's kind of what we're talking about too, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of the generation that in my mind pops in my head when you say that. Let's go back to that. That's what I think about. Mm-hmm. And man, I put those people on a pedestal above all else because they went to war. They came home. They had the PTSD, and they just dealt with it. Now, they just dealt with it, but that also got passed along to their children and their families, mm-hmm. and that monster didn't die with them. That lasted. But man, they had all sorts of problems. But these were men. Yeah. And this is what I'm kind of talking about too. Like, men were made up the majority of the workforce after World War II, right? They were gone, sure. They were at war, and the women were left to kind of do some of those factory jobs. But when the men came back, they kind of took over again, and it was back to the way it was. Now, Brock, we've got women in the workforce, and that changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you brought up something there is that, they did things differently. And now sometimes differently doesn't always necessarily mean better. I think work has become, I think the workers today are getting more abused than the workers back then. Now, not necessarily through the labor that they're doing, like the actual physical part of it, but what is required and what we're seeing in return, if that makes sense. Because like we talked about is that there was pride in that. You came back from the war, whatever, what have you, and everything. And there was pride in that factory job or whatever job you had, sales or whatever. But now we have workers that are asked to do so much more with less, in a sense of manpower, women power, what have you. And they're trying to stretch employees as much as possible to keep that, to keep the profit up. And that's what they're doing. Like, come on, guys, let's do more. Let's do, let's help make record profits for a guy, a VP, while you got some, lower end guy who's working 80 hours a week and miserable. I don't think you had that back in the day. You had more people in the workforce. And so saying that things were different, I don't think they were better back then. Or I think it was better back then than it is now. as far as what workers were getting and getting out of a job. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I think a lot of things, you kind of hit on some things here, is I think a lot of things have came into the culture
Mm-hmm.
and really worked against pitting the employee against the employer.
Okay.
And I think some of the things were like there's some of these catchphrases that you hear. It's like work hard, play hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. The culture, the mission statement, like all these things that are like they bring into this like new age with balancing the books
Mm-hmm.
on people's livelihood.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. Where
Yep.
maybe back in the day they didn't do that. Maybe back in the day the company took the hit. The company like sacrificed a little bit so they could keep these employees because that meant something to them. These people were family, right?
Yep.
That have been with these companies forever. And instead of like off with your head, bring because we're not making our bottom line, like you just said.
Yeah.
They would the company would sacrifice for the employees. I don't think you have that loyalty anymore.
No, and so that kind of brings me into where I'm at, and something that's been it's just the last 2 years, ever since the pandemic, and people realizing, and it goes into my original statement of people realizing like, holy shit, I don't need to sit in a cubicle for 40 years. I don't need to answer to someone. That's we as humans, I don't think we're meant to sit and type away in a fucking 6x6 cubicle in a room, a massive office, and go to these stupid board meetings and have to answer to 9 different people. I just watched Office Space recently, and it resonated. So that still resonates now, I think, in the culture. And then you brought in those these little tricks they're trying to play on employees, and you see those posters up on the wall with like teamwork and Rome wasn't built, and they do all this bullshit to try and trick us into thinking exactly it's all lip service, and then when they need to make a little bit more money, they got to get these these profits up because you got a board of directors in their fancy suits in their big New York City offices. Well, what do? Well, let's get rid of the people that we're paying too much. Let's bring in that next group that we can pay less and get more out of because they're just happy to have a job. And I think it's definitely fallen more on the employee, and it's happened now for the last probably since the 80s in my mind, because that's when that grind work culture where the Glenn Ross bullshit, you know what I mean? Like always be selling, and it's kind of a goofy mindset. And so, yeah, that's I think where it started. That's where it's
always be closing. ABC.
Yeah, it's the greed that came in with the companies. I'm not saying all companies and owners are pieces of shit. That's obviously not it. Like the company I work for, man, I've been blessed to be with them for, what did I just celebrate? 16 years now. And it's like, you don't get that at a lot of places, that kind of
you don't.
And involved in it back in the day, I think you did. And it was more of that retire 45 years at the same company, get that gold watch, and it wasn't bad. You got a nice pension. You're good to go. But now it's really shifted. Do you think that the employee has some fault in that? Us doing that? How does that fall on the employee? Are we getting lazy?
I do.
Are we getting complacent?
Yeah, I do. Man, chicken or the egg, right? Like you talked about. Oh man, there's so much I can hit on with this. Like you talked about it's the loyalty.
Yeah.
Right. You're 16 years with that company. That's huge.
Yep.
You've got to look at that. And these companies are not looking at that and being like, they're just like, that guy's always going to be there. Like, right. And I'm not saying that is the way it is with your company, but I can see that with other companies because I've been there. It's just like, he's just always going to be there. So don't worry about it. Like, no, that needs to be rewarded and kind of shown like, hey, look at this guy. This guy's been here with us. And it was like a brand thing too. Like, hey man, this is my brand. I'm going to stick up for my brand.
Right.
That was an accomplishment. That was something to be worn on your sleeve. And I don't think that's the case anymore. Are the employees to blame for some of this? Yes. Are the company? I think it's a 50-50 thing. I really do. I think that there's been a change in the employees' attitudes about being lazy because I think that everything's now. I do. Here's the thing, Brock. And this is what I want to really, really drive home, is that the reason why the employees, I'm putting some blame on the employees too, is because of the piss poor leadership that
Mm.
these companies have instilled. And I'm not talking just like top tier companies. I'm talking like the only thing that I can really talk to is basically the plumbing trade.
Mm-hmm.
It's the piss poor leaders that they
Mm-hmm.
have put in charge. And and I'm going to tell you this right now, it's not going to change
Yep.
because they can send these guys to that Carnegie class, all this other jackwagon bullshit. And
Mm-hmm.
dude, you can't do that. Some of these people just need to be born leaders, and
Mm-hmm.
they're just not. People will not follow them. And why is that? And here's the other thing, Brock, is that and I'm trying to really like take this from the macro to the micro and really break this down and figure out what makes a good leader.
Mm-hmm.
I see it in the gym with some of these kids that I like mentor. And man, like I get a little emotional about it because we talk about the culture. We talk about the youth coming up, the Gen Zs, even the millennials and everything like that. And in my, man, I was the biggest critic of this generation, your generation and the generation after. I'm a Gen X or whatever
You're
it is.
like a late Gen Xer or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Dude, I knocked you guys hard.
Yep.
And now here's the thing is like once you become kind of enlightened and you learn to self-reflect, you can kind of look and kind of like just take a step back and be like, man, the reason why I felt that way is because you guys just didn't have the leaders. And I'm not saying you personally, because I know I wouldn't be friends with you if you weren't that status guy.
Yeah.
But when I see these kids in the gym, man, like some of them blow me the fuck away. Like I'm like, you kids are so much farther along than I ever was. It's mind-boggling to see what they can do, And I never punch down. I'll punch down to some like jackway that comes in the gym that's like my age, that's cocking off and thinking he's all this, that, and the other thing. But I'm not going to punch down to these kids. If they've got questions, I'm going to help them. And I see that. That's my future workforce, right? And here's what I'm trying to get into. That's my future workforce. And if I don't want to be surrounded by these people that I've had problems with in the past where I'm just like, God, they're just fucking worthless, then I need to be the leader that I wish I had.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, Brock, is when I ask these kids, how come you're not in sports? These kids are stud athletes. They're the strongest kids I've ever met. And they're in some podunk town in Wisconsin. And it's just like they're freaks of nature. And they work hard. Their work ethic is like bar none. And when I ask them, like, hey, man, why aren't you playing fucking football? Why aren't you playing basketball? It's just like, I don't believe in the coaches. I can't follow them. Like, the leadership is just garbage. And I ask them, this is when I ask them, why? Why don't you follow them? And like, it's fake. Yeah. And that's just it. You can't fake this shit. And I think that's what we have in these companies, these corporations. We have the weakest leaders ever. Yeah. And, again, too, I got to revert it back to the gym thing because that's where I see it in the embryonic stages with this youth, with this new workforce coming up. I see some of the guys that are my age, again, with the youth. We're not talking like the people that should know better. Yeah. I have no time for them. I'm talking about the youth, the innocence, right? They're just up and coming. They're learning. And again, too, I think the gym is like a gateway drug to success in the workforce. You learn struggle and you learn a slow struggle. You don't see things right away. You see things eventually. And I get super passionate about this. Whenever I have somebody, and I've had my friends do this, whenever I have somebody say like, these fucking kids in here, this, that, and the other thing, you see this? Are you going to tell them or am I going to tell them? Yep. Why don't you go tell them? Yeah. How about you be the leader you wish you had and you go tell them? Instead of bitching to me about it, go take care of it. Go show them. Go guide them. Go lead them. These kids want to be led. They don't want, right? They don't want to be ordered around. They don't want authority over them. And I don't act like the authority over them. I lead them. Yeah. And I lead them through example. And I lead them through compassion. And like, I don't know if you want to call it servant leadership. I guess I don't really believe in that. But hey, man, I'll get down the dirt and I'll roll around with you too. Yeah. It's not like I'm above that. And I think that's exactly what we're missing in the workforce is that kind of grit and determination with the new up and comers.
And what I see maybe to kind of to jump off of that is I think a lot of companies found it easier instead of nurturing, because when you get people that are qualified and can lead, you're going to have to pay them for it. But we don't want to pay because that affects the bottom dollar. And so instead, is of paying the qualified people, the people that can do great work for us. Let's just bring someone in who's not bad, who will punch in, do the stuff, but they're not going to lead and help make that next thing because we can pay him less than the qualified people. I see a lot of qualified people not doing the jobs that they should be doing because companies won't pay. That's what it is. It's criminal what some of these companies are asking for, and then it's saying this is what we'll give you. And what we'll give you is a barely livable salary, 2 weeks vacation. And, it just, we've been abused. And I just don't know when that switch was. Actually, I do. I think it's when greed came in and companies were like, it's all about profit. And you see some now young business owners. It's that one guy who owns, God, I can't think of it. He's on Twitter all the time, but like, during the pandemic, he gave like his employees all that, like and he increased the pay rate, and it actually increased productivity and what they made. And he's a guy trying to shake things up. And you can see maybe why, like you said, like Gen Z these kids don't want to work these days. I don't think it's that they don't want to work. It's just they haven't had anything motivating them to do it. They haven't had leaders. They haven't had leaders. They haven't all it is, you got to go do this. You got to do this. Well, why do I got to do this? How about you help me, find a passion, help me, grow and nurture that, whatever it may be. Maybe it is an accountant. Maybe it's a plumber. It doesn't matter. You got to find a way to nurture that. You can't just tell someone, well, you got to do it. Well, fucking why? Why do I got to do it? That's ridiculous. And what am I going to get at the end? I'm not saying that you need to say, well, I need this, this, and this, but it's okay to have a end goal and something to work for other than just going in, putting in your time. And that's what I think a lot of people do now. They're just putting in their time at work just so they can get the fuck out of there and have some kind of life. And that's different. And I'm lucky. I know this is kind of easy for me because I was able to find my passion and have people around me nurture it in my company. And now here I am, and I'm so fortunate for that. And I know a lot of people don't get it, but you're right. Is just those leaders. How do we find now to put that in that culture, other than just you need to grind it out and you need to no. You need to. I want to make a career out of this. I mean, how long have you been plumbing now and gotten to the point where you're at? I mean, you started when you
26 years.
26 years, right?
Yeah.
And you don't stay in a career like that by not having the motivation. So that's bullshit for them to say these younger generations aren't motivated. They are. They just need that leadership because they don't know what to do otherwise. And I think it's unfair to give them a bad shake on that.
It's 100%. And my views have switched. Right? We switched on it. There's a couple things. Leadership. We failed. I failed. Right? Like my generation fucking failed. The generation probably before us did too with instilling that giving us good quality leaders. So you're 100%.
Yeah.
The other thing too, Brock, I gotta say this, it's the schools. The schools teach you to be a good little minion and go to your factory job and do your 9 to 5 and do all this, right? They don't teach you anything else other than that. It's just an assembly line of bullshit. The school system now, the public school system is fucking garbage.
Mm-hmm.
The most I'm gonna say, and I get really passionate about this, to the point of maybe emotional. But I try to these days. I really try to keep my emotions down because that's gotten me in trouble at work too. Because I've been fired twice.
Yeah. We got to have an HR meeting about your outburst at work today,
dude. HR. That's another thing. That's another thing that we do. A fucking plumber.
Yeah.
There's an HR department at a plumbing company.
Yep.
Are you kidding me? Do you know who these guys are? We play chess, not checkers. That's a whole nother thing. But it's the schools. School systems, dude. I get so passionate about this. The garbage that they teach you in school. They don't teach you anything about work. These kids are coming to the gym, Brock, and learning this stuff. And if that's more of a learning environment than they could ever get, the worst people in the world that I've ever met are teachers. I'll stand behind that.
And see, that's always tough for me because I think teachers now at this point, my dad taught for 21 years and he was so passionate about it and he made a difference. To this day, people still come up and recognize him and say, I loved your class. It was the best. But look at
your dad. Look at your dad. Didn't he teach ag?
Yeah, he taught ag, and he was the FFA, the
I
FFA.
learned more from my
Yep.
ag teachers than I ever learned from
Yeah.
some
So
piece of shit social studies teacher.
So here's what I think is, and that's on the government, that's on our educational system. And what we've done is we've failed teachers in a sense where we have not given them enough of the resources or pay. We're overworking them, expecting them to do all this stuff and help shape these minds. But going back to that motivation, what's the fucking motivation for a teacher now? To have to use their own money to buy supplies for the class? That's where I think we failed in that sense. And it's gotten so out of hand that now it's just hurting it. And yeah, of course, like social studies, some of these things, not bad to learn them, but it's become just a placeholder. What school has now become, instead of place of like, I'm excited about my education, now it's become, this is just where we put the kids to kind of keep them together while these parents are out working ridiculous hours. And this is just what we have. Does that make sense? Because
yeah. One room schoolhouse. My grandma went to a one room schoolhouse, and she was better educated than I'd ever be. And I had hundreds of thousands of dollars at my disposal at that school.
It was something to strive for. Again, with everything we've lost, and it goes back to that motivation and that drive and that leadership, and everyone's now being affected by it. It's a trickle down effect. And it's, again, we say we don't have good leaders in the government who are making these rules and setting up this stuff, and then it trickles down, and then the teachers are underpaid and overworked, and they don't give a shit because what are they getting from it? And then it goes to the students who are now unmotivated to find that passion, find that career. And so it's this trickle down effect that I think we've just seen continue to go for, I don't know, maybe when the boomers got around. I don't know if it's the boomers that really kind of, that's where it went. They almost had it kind of easy. They're the greatest generation, the parents of the boomers really had that work ethic, but then the boomers maybe lost it because they didn't have to work as hard. They didn't have it as bad. They were living kind of that sweet spot. And then
you want your kids to have a better life than you did, right?
Right.
I think they saw so much horrific shit, living through that, the Depression, then World War II, and even some of these guys in World War I, that they wanted their kids to have a better life. And what is that old saying? Like, hard times create hard men, good times create weak men. Kind of that whole cycle.
Yep, that cycle. And I think that's a great saying. Is hard times create. Well, I'll have to look it up, but that is the boomers. Then the parents, the greatest generation, they were like, yeah, let's fix this, let's make this great, and then we lost it. And now we're starting to see that effects. And then unfortunately, all the older generations dog on the generation behind them, even though they're the ones that were in charge of their upbringing and that leadership and that motivation. And it's just, and now we're at a crossroads of what's going to happen.
That was a joke with me was when I get these apprentices, when I worked for this one plumbing company, these bottom feeders, they'd send me these apprentices. And oh my God. It was just one after another of like, where the fuck have you been? It was the funny thing. It was like it was the joke was 1 out of 10 was worth a shit. Yep. And when you got that 1 out of 10, dude, he was a rock star. But then you started to think like, man, is he just a rock star because all these 9 other kids were just horrific? Like not showing up to work, sleeping, like they catch them sleeping and shit. Like all this crazy stuff. Was it just that, or was this one kid just this like exceptional guy? I don't know, but I know that these kids that I'm dealing with now, and kind of like getting involved with them, I know for a fact, Brock, it's not that. It's the fact like they put me to shame at that age. Yeah. So like there's something going on with certain kids, and I need to find out what that is so we can replicate it. Yeah. And I haven't figured that out yet.
Well, and I think even some of the lower end ones just haven't had the leadership. There's some people that are lost causes, and I hate to say it, but some people are just, I don't know. But there's a lot of people that can be taught, and that's giving them that motivation. It's not just you're an employee, do this, do that. No, it's like, hey, you're part of this actual, and I know we were joking about teamwork, but we want you here. We want you to grow with us. That's what we want to see. We want to nurture that. And I just don't think they're getting that now. And when you do get it, but then we don't pay them. We don't give them enough we abuse them to the point where like, fuck this. Why am I busting my ass when I'm not being taken care of in that sense? You still got to take care of the employee. You know what I mean?
That's called Price's Law. So
Yeah.
that's a real thing, dude. That
Yeah.
and you hit on it just perfectly. It's the square root of the people in your domain do half of the work.
Mhm.
So, like, if you look at it, you're going to test my math, but if like there's 10 people in your workforce, 2 people are doing
Mhm.
half the work, right?
Yeah.
And what happens is in these Fortune 500 companies, that becomes like an extreme. So now, like, if you have 25,000 people in your company,
Yep.
like, what is it like? Oh, what square root of that is?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
200
But it's
people, like doing
yeah.
half
Yep.
work.
Yep.
But then what happens in these Fortune 500 companies is why they collapse after 26 years, 25 years, is
Yep.
because all the good people, all the competent people that start to realize this and aren't being compensated for it, they leave.
Fucking
And
go.
what are they
Yep.
doing?
Maybe
And this is
they start their
you
own
did.
company, they do
You
their
got
own,
it.
go on their own, and
Got
then
it.
these big companies, they'll just, but then unfortunately the big companies, they just keep bringing in more, they just keep cycling in, and it's just exactly. Yep.
You know, this is this is the other thing that we wanted to get into, that I wanted to get to about the work culture. You kind of segued right into this, and it's I just did some work at his house. I had a guy that I knew, and we always knew him in our little clique of friends as being like the he was the business guy. He was the money
Yeah.
guy, right?
Oh,
Like
businessman,
the
a
guy.
businessman doing business, man. That's what it is.
He was the Gordon Gecko, bro.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
just like talking money all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that old Andrew Tate thing. If you hang around with a bunch of pussies like that just talk about bullshit all the time, you'll be really good at talking bullshit. But if
Yeah.
you hang
Yeah.
around a bunch of guys that are talking money all the time, you're gonna be really good at talking money. Like, you're gonna
Mhm.
understand it. So
Yeah.
like that's all he would ever talk about was like business and money and like this, that, and the other thing. I called him when I was fired from 2 jobs.
Mhm.
And partially because of my inability to deal, like, I was a plumber. I was never taught this stuff, and I was a rockhead, and it was
Mhm.
just like I had emotional, like, I didn't have my emotions under control.
Mhm.
So like I would say whatever the fuck I wanted to say, and I get you can't do that in today's plumbing world, which blew
No.
my mind. When I started, we could, because I worked for a family business, and if you wanted to have it out with a guy, that was encouraged. You
Yep.
just come to me and you let me have it, and I'm going to let
Yep.
you have it, and then 10 minutes later we're going to be friends.
Yep.
Dude, that
Yep.
changed. That changed with all this namby-pamby, foo-foo bullshit, with all this new age crap, right?
Mhm.
Where you couldn't, dude, I'm serious. When I was an apprentice, there was a guy that rode me every fucking day about
Yep.
everything. And he called me every name under the book, from a egg to a pussy to a fat fuck. Like,
Yeah.
I'm serious, dude. Like, trying to make me quit. And
Yeah.
you think that apply now? No, not
Oh
a chance.
no.
But anyway, I
No.
digress. Going back, dude, I could just tell you story after story. But going back to this guy, I went and did some work at his house. And so I had gone through this situation where I had been let go a couple times, and I went to this new company. I was going to kind of start it new, and basically, I was kind of running into the same stuff. The
Mhm.
incompetence at the top level, like, what, dude? I have more experience than you are. Like, you're questioning me,
Mhm.
And it was my ego,
Yeah.
and like I didn't know how to deal with him. So I figured I'd talk to him. And
Yep.
you know what he told me first thing? He's like, Dwight, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to tell you the way it is. He's like, it's never going to change. You're going to have this conversation with me a year down the road, 2 years down the road, and 5 years down the road. You're going to have the exact same conversation. The only way that you can make this right, because you have no control over anything but yourself, is to be the leader that you wish you had and go on your own and do your own thing and
Mhm.
take control of your destiny. And God damn it, Brock, that's what I ended up doing. And yesterday I was at his place doing some work, and we talked about exactly that. He
Yeah.
looked at me and he's like, I knew you had it in you.
Yep.
And this is what I want to get back to about that whole, like, all that bullshit from the school system. The school system does not teach you to be an entrepreneur. They teach you to
Mhm.
be a good little slave, a good little minion, right?
Yep.
And they don't teach that freedom, independence thing, that leadership. They don't teach any of that stuff. And I think, dude, might be a conspiracy in me, but I think this is all by design. It's
Yeah.
all by design. I
I
think that there's several things that we were told
Mhm.
the customer's always right. That's not
Yep.
the case. I think that we were told there's another part of that too. The customer's always right, but we were taught that, like, ooh, don't make too many waves.
Mhm.
This stuff's booby trapped. And if
Yeah.
you go out and you do this on your own, you could lose everything.
Yeah.
And dude, when I went on my own, I found out that this stuff isn't booby trap or voodoo and
No.
black magic. Oh, you just didn't want me in the club. You
Yeah.
didn't want me in the competition club. And
Yeah.
I figured it out. And I
Well-
think also too, they also said that money doesn't buy happiness. It's the root of all evil. I think that was a bunch of rich people telling people that.
Oh yeah.
And
I have that
it-
all the
right?
time too. That's a conversation I've had
and
on the morning show.
that goes back to some of these employers too, telling these people that, putting this in their heads.
Yeah.
That, don't you go on your own. There's a lot of money
Yep.
doesn't buy happiness. Like,
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of been we've been institutionalized in this way of what it is and how we need to be. We gotta do this. We gotta get our diploma, and we gotta go to college. We gotta get a good job. We gotta work for them, put in our time, and then it'll all pay off in the end. But what a lot of people are seeing is bullshit. It's not paying off. I'm not happy. I'm miserable. I got debt. I got this and that. And it all just starts kind of from that. And it's all just this lie that we've been fed to I've really gotten into it. Like, if I didn't have to work, I wouldn't. If I could just go around and travel and camp and fish and do all and I'm starting to realize that. And when I was younger, and again, I'm super fortunate where I'm at. If my boss ever watches this, I love my job. And I'm super,
is that the guy you were talking shit about the other day?
Yes. Yeah. There you go. He's kidding, boss. If you're watching this, but I found my passion though, and I made what I wanted my reality to be. And I know a lot of people might say that's easier said than done, but yeah, you got to find your own happiness in that, even in the work culture, and finding that drive, that motivation is there. And I think a lot of people have it, but they just don't know how to get it because they've never been led in that way, whether it started off in school or the workforce that they're in. I mean, I don't know. It's just weird. I think a lot of people though with this pandemic started to realize, like, okay, where is my motivation? What am I doing with my life at this point? And again, talk about those kids. They're like, I don't want to play sports because I don't trust the coach. Okay, well, what's your direction then? Where do you want to go? They have no one telling them. They're kids. And that's a hard thing to do because now it's just going to keep going. It's not like some guy's just going to tap them on the shoulder, like, I got all the answers for you. Here you go. You know what I mean? So
yeah. These kids are saying that like these coaches were spitting and regurgitating all this bullshit that they heard from the internet. Again, It was these slogans, just like these companies do, right?
Yep.
They just regurgitate these stupid slogans like "work hard, play hard," work hard, play hard with us.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what it is.
According to our rules.
Me.
Yep.
Exactly. I want to tell this story. I had this kid. This kind of relates back to this too. I had this kid come and job shadow with me, and I got a couple of these kids from the gym that are going to be job shadowing with me again. Last year, and I just kind of kicked off the business, and we're rolling around in the truck, and I just kind of started to get to know this high school kid. So he had this job shadow, and he comes with me, and he's talking to me in the truck, and he's just like, I was like talking to my teachers. We were talking. The first thing I do now when I get a young guy like this in the work environment is I explain to him what I do. Hey man, you kick ass, you take names, you're gonna make a 6-figure living right off the bat. You get out of apprenticeship, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm telling him this, and he's just like, I had this conversation with my teacher. We were kind of giving my teacher this, whatever they're doing this for this class, this economics class or whatever. We were making fun of my teacher because I was like, I make more money than you. I should be teaching this class. And I looked over at him. I'm driving a truck, right? And I look over at him. I'm like, the fuck you make more money than your teacher? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you're 16, 17 years old. Like, what do you do? And he's like, I'm all lawns. And I'm like, okay, so bullshit, right? Dude was going to pull out his fucking checkbook and just be like, here he is. It's right here. This is how much I got in my checkbook. Dude figured it out. And I was just like, tell me about this. Tell me how you figured this out at such a young age. And he's like, I don't know. I just started mowing these people's lawns in this town, and they were all from Chicago, and I figured they weren't around all the time, and like I could just charge them whatever I want. They could just mow their lawns because they don't have anybody to do it. And I just go around and do this. Dude made like 65. I shouldn't say this, but this guy made like $65K. A fucking high school kid.
Yeah. Well,
he didn't learn that in school.
It's there. No. And again, I get to go back. We've just hamstringed our own society in our own way, our own mindset, because it was just easy to do. It was the easiest way. And we let corporate greed now affect people's lives, just speaking for the bottom dollar. That's kind of what it boils down to. And if you're lucky enough to find a good mentor that can at least send you in the right direction, I think you can. You can have a very successful, fulfilling career, whatever it may be, whatever you decide to do. But unfortunately, no one's got that leadership, and it goes back to that same thing. It's just the bullshit we've been fed on the work culture, the way it is. This is what you need to do, and yeah. Instead, you could be like him, 65 or 65K in the bank at 17 and ready to go.
It's wild too. And it wasn't the only kid that I ran into like that there.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into this little girl in the gym, dude. I gotta tell you the story. Like, this is little girl in the gym. She's like, at the time she was like 16. Like, she's cute as a button. She's tiny, you know. And somebody had told me, I'm like, well, who makes all this stuff? It was like bakery stuff. And he's like, oh, they do this. And I'm like, wow, cool. Like, well, you know what? I'm going to support that little bit of like entrepreneurship. Like,
yeah, for sure.
This is her business.
Yep.
Who taught her this? And so I like go up to her. I'm like, hey man, you baked me a cake for my wife's birthday? And she's like, yeah, I can do anything you want. I'm like, anything I want. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, God damn it. Okay, no problem. I'm gonna let you know. I sent her a picture of a stuffed chicken that we like goof around with, like in the house. Like,
oh
yeah,
like, no, yeah, you're weird.
You know the one.
Yeah,
you know the one, dude. Dude, I sent her. I'm like, make me a cake of this chicken, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Dude, the thing was like the hit of the freaking party. It looked identical to the chicken. It was like the greatest thing. And I'm just like, again, makes me sit back and think like these kids are so far ahead.
Here's what it is. They have the tools. They have all these great tools at their disposal.
Yes.
And so if they can find that drive, they're set. I mean, we had used encyclopedias to write book reports. All right. Now, and I think there is something to be said for that and learning those ways. But nowadays, kids they have all of these tools that will make them better in their careers, better in their lives, if they can find someone to help them, again, nurture that. And that's, again, I think the big linchpin of this conversation is the leadership that we have lacked basically since the boomers, and not putting it all on the boomers, but they got this easy life and this great life right out of the gate. And they just assume that's how it is. And then in order to keep that, though, they realize like, well, wait, no, we get it. So anyway, but
it's a mentorship, right? It's a mentorship. It's like a squire and a knight, right? I've heard that comparison too. It teaches you how to do things. Like, where is that? Is that the family unit, Brock? Is that what it is?
I think that's
maybe we're losing that. Maybe we're losing Christianity. Like, is it? Are we losing that? And that's what's falling apart.
Are we chasing other things instead of maybe? And again, whatever you believe, or the moral high ground, like maybe we're letting it slip, and we're losing some of those core values that can help us in all these other areas. And it could be that. I did want to go back on, what I think is funny, talking about that kid mowing lawns. You know what? Who wants to get their hands on that and who will probably do everything they can? All the colleges, all these places like, hey, you got all this money. Why don't you come to our college? Give us that money. We'll give you this education, this worthless degree that you don't need, and that's,
That's what he's doing. His college is paid for. 100%. He could go now. He's going to go be an engineer. It sounds like.
So that's good. So he's doing. There's certainly, yeah.
I want the people building my shit. I want them to have that college degree.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. He's no dummy. Like, he's going to get a degree in something that he can use and make a lot of good living at. Right.
Yep.
Good living. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, I get kind of ragged on sometimes for like, now that in my like lifting career that I'm lifting with high school kids, and like, you guys, you lift with a bunch of you hang out with a bunch of high school kids at the gym now, and it's just like, yeah, I do, and the reason why is because like I want to be the leader I wish I had, right?
Yep.
And so like what I'm trying to do is like understand them, and I'll ask them questions. There's nothing that I want to brag to them. They already know my pedigree. They already know what I am. Yep. I don't need to talk about myself. I want to talk about them. And I ask them, like, what's the biggest plight in your life? What do you got going on? What are you thinking right now? Like, what are your thoughts on X, Y, Z? And I want to see where they're at. I want to keep my eye on the youth of the country so I can understand what's going on now and not just pass judgment on some of these kids. And then maybe next time this conversation comes up, I can have some answers.
And I think that's a big thing too that they're not getting is if they've just been kind of brushed under the rug. You know, it's like, oh, they're always in their phones. Well, it's because we're not fucking talking to them. We're not giving them all those tools that we had, or at least that were there for us. You know, they do have tools, but it's the different life tools there, and it's just it's like, oh, they're just on their phones, and these kids these days, but no one's asking them how they're doing. No one's asking them what they got, what they're worried about, what their concerns are, what they got going on, and that's going to affect them later on, and affect. Oh, hi. There's a naked baby that just popped in here right now. Hi, Pumpkin.
My dog is here. He's naked too.
I know. You got a naked dog. Hi. And a wife in a robe. Well,
hey.
Yeah, this is going to turn into OnlyFans real quick. So no. Bye.
Speaking of entrepreneurship,
right there. Honestly,
that's what's going on.
Yeah, dude. If you know, maybe we can end with this because this was a really interesting thing, and I like your take on it. Is that I think you're on point with like it's there. The talent, the drive, it's there. There's just nothing to nurture it other than some bullshit posters and corporate getaways and all of this shit that they've done to mask what the real problem is. And it's just there's not the employees have felt abused and starting to come through, or they're just going to do the bare minimum. And big companies are going to keep trying to chase those record profits, and they're going to do that by just working us through, working on many people instead of finding the right people, and it's not going to get fixed until robots take over and we have AI doing 75% of the jobs. You know what I mean? And companies won't care, and then we're going to be, I don't know, maybe that'll be a good thing. Then we can go chase our passion because, you know.
Maybe who knows what's going to happen, dude?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I want to give this to you too. Like, the reason why I think you're so fucking good at your job, and I've seen you evolve like over time in your position. Like, I listen to you on the radio. I've been on the radio with you. Mm-hmm. Like, we have discussions. I see how you are in public when people are like, hey, you that guy on the radio? Like, you're just by hearing your voice. It's your ability to listen and then communicate back to those people. And again, that's that whole listening thing, being able to like comprehend and listen and like have have a conversation. Dude, that's hard to find, man.
Yeah.
And that when your employer notices that, I think that again, you got to have the right employer, you got to have the right leader. And when that's noticed, it needs to be acknowledged, and that needs to be put on that pedestal. And then that needs to be the example. I want to end with this, and then we can do whatever. But I said this right before I got fired, and I was the top guy there. I mean, there wasn't anybody that was better than me in that department. There just wasn't. I mean, it was the C team, dude. And again, like I should know when to leave, and I just didn't. And I asked them, I said, how do you win a game? Like, let's say a basketball game. How do you win the game?
Yep.
You just keep giving the ball to your best guy every time, right? How do you win a championship? The only way you win a championship is you take your best guy and you have them develop every other person on that team.
Yep.
That's how you win the championship, and that's how you become a dynasty. And dude, when your employer notices people like you and acknowledges that puts you on that little bit of a pedestal. And it's just like, not so much like turning people against you, but just kind of like showing that this is how it's done. This is
something to strive for, and showing that, hey, we will. Yeah, that's a great way. I think a great way to wrap this up, because that's exactly it. And the one of the most disgusting images that I can think up is a group of rich CEOs and VPs and everything around a big wood table in their fancy suits, just laughing and hucking it up, and not a fucking care in the world because of where they're at. And that's just piss poor leadership. That's chasing but that's right now what's running a lot of this stuff and what's bringing everything down. And like you said, I'm sure it's probably hard to get a lot of those, but when you find them and they actually take care of it, I think it would be beneficial for the entire society and the workforce. Like you said, nurturing that, clean all that up, get rid of these old guys, send them to their retirement, give them their fucking, cut them their checks, and be like, get out of here. And I guarantee everyone would be better off if they did exactly what you said right there. And that would change the work culture. It absolutely would.
Lead from the fucking front.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Don't just put up a poster in a break room and send out a mass email saying, oh, it's it's Margaret's birthday, so everyone's gonna get a piece. It's like, fuck, I don't care. I don't want it. No, what are we doing here? Yeah.
Right. Nobody buys into your fucking dream, dude. Like,
exactly.
I mean, your mission statements and all this other bullshit. That's not what make people want to come to work and feel comfortable, right? They lie, hide, they cheat when they when they finally realize that you're cutting off heads to balance the budget.
Yep. Yeah. What's that new term? Quiet quitting, where you don't quit. You just do the bare minimum to not get fired. And that's a horrible term to have. That's a horrible term to have, but we're just like, fuck it. Because, they gave us Hawaiian shirt Friday. Thanks. I still have student debt and I can't afford a house, but appreciate it, guys. It's miserable. And I think, that was a good end to it there. And it's lead from the front, and that will change the work culture. And generations need to shit on the generation after them, because it's not doing anyone any favors. They need to lead and nurture and all that. And it'll change the work culture for sure.
100%. I think we're on the same page with this. I didn't know if we would be. I was kind of wondering about this.
See, for me, I just my life, and again, going back to how fortunate I am with what I got, and I realize again, I kind of wrap it up with this, is that I'm one of the lucky few that finds their passion and has been nurtured through it with my company, and I've seen them do it a lot. So many coworkers that I've known that, hell, my wife, Kristen, she's now been with the company for 10 years. Something like that. A long time. Not quite that, but anyway. Yeah, too long. I know. She's a real battle axe working with her. I tell you what.
Is she your boss?
She's my boss, exactly. But there's right there. Like they've literally made our family a part. Like they've taken our family and made it their family, and that's a great thing. And I think that's what everyone should strive for. And it's possible, even with these big companies. I don't care what they say, it's possible with that. So yeah. And for me, life's too short to do something you don't love, and or at least not find a passion in there somewhere. Fuck that, man. If I'm on here, if I'm lucky, I'll get 80 years on this planet. And God, you'd be dreaming if you think I'm going to waste away trying to just fill someone else's pockets and not enjoy what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
God, 80 years? You really? Okay.
Come on now.
Well, you don't fucking age, but Jesus Christ, I know 50's going to hit hard.
I'm gonna be dancing on your grave, buddy. I'm gonna be.
You probably will.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna be smoking a cigarette with a 40 ounce on your grave, son.
But I'm gonna leave a big casket.
A big casket. Yeah, we're gonna have to.
You know what I'm saying, bro?
We're gonna have to put you on a goddamn wheelie thing. We're gonna have to use a forklift. I'm not Paul Bearing that shit. I'll throw it my back, man. All right.
Oh shit, man.
Well, this was fun, man, and this is an interesting take on it. I wasn't sure exactly when we were talking work culture, but I think we
nailed it.
We nailed it. I think so. So maybe we'll start showing this at those company retreats we talked about. Those forced company picnics on a Saturday in the middle of summer when you would rather do anything else. Right there.
Yeah, when you're working hard, playing hard.
Yeah. Good. Everyone, it's mandatory. So bring your family and also bring a dish to pass, because we're not going to provide food. Fuck you, man.
Yeah. Shit. Why don't you hang out with a bunch of people you don't like anyway?
Exactly. We're going to do team building exercises. This is my fucking nightmare. This is what it is right there. So anyway.
The last bunch of dorks and nerds that I want to hang out with is people that I've worked with, right? Like,
yeah. I got to do that 3-footed race with Dave from accounting. I don't know. It's like, yeah, but
with the HR lady, it's going
to be the HR lady. Oh Jesus.
Oops.
Oh, sorry. What are we going to do? File some paperwork? She came on to me, man.
Right. You know how many people have probably been fired in situations like that with those business where alcohol is involved and all that, right? Like those things.
Company Christmas parties. Yeah. Oh God.
HR nightmare. Yep.
HR ladies just sitting there like, God damn it, this is gonna be so much paperwork on Monday. That's it. Just go.
It's on my fingers.
All right. Oh no. We got a meeting. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for hanging out. We appreciate it. This has been Shooting the Bull with Brock and Dwight. And I don't know what we're going to talk about next, but I'm sure we'll bullshit about something. So that's why it's Shooting the Bull. All right. We'll see everyone later.
Night.
Keep your butthole tight.